Hello, this is the Elections and the Political Process, Section A, the Role of Political Parties lecture. Our prioritized standard is Government Civics 25, and objectively you'll examine the role and necessity of political parties in the political process. While the Constitution does not mention political parties, which are a coalition of people seeking to control the government by contesting elections and winning office, to effectively conduct business, they are necessary. The winner in each electoral district is the candidate receiving what's called a plurality of the votes, which means they receive the most votes, yet not necessarily a majority of the votes. So a majority, if you don't remember, that's 50% plus one more vote. We notice the 2016 Tennessee Republican primary results, well, Donald Trump had the most votes, but percentage-wise, it was not a majority of the votes because, well, plurality system. More candidates in election decreases the chances of any one candidate winning. So if you notice in this one, many people were running, so the odds of any one of those winning was very, very low. This usually causes two major parties to emerge in this type of electoral system. Much of Europe doesn't actually use this type of system. Much of Europe has what's called a proportional system. So you would get representatives, say in Congress, if this was for Congress, based on the percent of the vote they got. Political parties have tended to form coalitions based on political ideologies, which are political divisions that are in society. Political parties bring together candidates, campaign donors, and campaign workers. By reducing the field of candidates, it makes it easier for voters to learn about candidates running for office. The two major political parties in the United States are the Democratic and the Republican Party. Members of the Democratic Party tend to follow the political ideology that's known as liberalism, as where members of the Republican Party, sometimes referred to as the GOP, they tend to follow the political ideology known as conservatism. So liberalism, in a sense, means you like progress. You are pro-change. If you are conservative, that means you would like the status quo, meaning you want to keep things either the way they are or possibly go back to a previous time of the way things were. So in a nutshell, that's basically what those two terms mean. Now, possibly that might not be either of you. So for those people with some characteristics of both political ideologies, these are known as our moderates. And they may not identify themselves with either major political party and rather consider themselves as independents. You will actually find liberals and conservatives in both major political parties. You won't only see liberals in the Democratic Party and only conservatives in the Republican Party. Sometimes you'll see some of those in both. While the U.S. political system is characterized as a two-party system in which two major parties dominate, there are also several minor parties. There are four distinct types of minor parties. One of those types are ideological parties, and these are based on a particular set of beliefs, meaning they're going to have comprehensive views on social issues, economic issues, and political issues. There's going to be a manner in which they answer all those questions. For instance, the Libertarian Party, their primary concern is liberty and freedom to do as you wish, which means they generally think the government should be out of most everything. They don't like taxes. They don't like illegal drugs being illegal. They generally want everything to be fair game. Constitution Party, believe it or not, they're going to be all about the Constitution. If it's not in the Constitution, they're not going to be a fan. Another type are single issue parties. These concentrate on only one public policy issue, and they usually will fade away after time. Once one of the major political parties kind of takes some of these things, there's no need for them anymore. So there was a time when you needed the Right to Life Party, but now the Republican Party has basically taken that mantle, so there's not much need for them anymore. Green Party, there was a time when you had to have an environmental party all to itself, but now that's pretty much a Democratic Party. So this is what usually happens to single-issue parties. Another type are economic protest parties. These develop during periods of economic discontent, usually without an ideological base. So these parties usually will fade as the nation climbs out of economic hard times. So you probably, in your recent history, probably heard of the Tea Party, which came about tail end of George W. Bush, but mostly the beginning of Barack Obama. When the economy was poor during the Great Recession, they rose. And when the economy kind of improved, well, a lot of their base kind of went away. Splinter parties. These split away from one of the major political parties and are often formed around a strong personality. So these tend to be the most important type of minor parties in American politics. So you probably have heard of the Theodore Roosevelt Progressive Party or the Bull Moose Party in 1912. Robert La Follett's Progressive Party, 1924. Democrats had a couple of these splinter parties in 1948. You had Henry Wallace's Progressive Party. You also had Strom Thurmond's States' Rights Party or the Dixiecrats Party. And 1968, we also had George C. Wallace, who split from the Democratic Party to make the American Independent Party. Strong third-party candidacy can play a major role in elections, although usually as a spoiler. Now, third parties rarely win, but often pull votes from one of the major parties. So, for instance, in 1992, you had an independent candidate, H. Ross Perot, which was a businessman who didn't get any electoral votes, but he did pull in almost 20 million popular votes. He was probably more conservative, so he pulled most of his votes from what would have been George Bush Sr. So these third parties, they force major parties to address issues that actually gave minor parties relevance in the first place. So that is the primary function of them. All right, this concludes elections in the political process, Section A, the role of political parties lecture. We again hit prioritize standard, Government Civics 25, and objectively now you can examine the role and necessity of political parties in the political process.